day, and thank you so much for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Folks, as always, I'm always proud to say that Southern Ontario is the place to be for high-level sports athletes, executives, and in today's case, we have an up-and-coming broadcaster from the Golden Horseshoe that has become quite a success story. Well, at this point of his career, it's still being determined if he's the most popular product to hail from the small town of Fonthill, just outside of St. Catharines. But in all seriousness, this hardworking multimedia talent from Niagara College has worked his way up from local radio and TSN Sports Radio to being the everyday face and voice of the Ticats audio network. But when one door opened, he stepped right through to CHCH as a weekend sportscaster, where his many talents are currently being utilized now on a weekday basis. He's currently the host of Newsmakers, another podcast here on CHCH. Louie Butko, I'm happy. I'm pumped up to see you here.
What an intro, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to be on the podcast. Great to be kind of reviving a format of something that obviously was a big part of my life growing up, not having cable. Most of my sports came through Face Off. So it's really an honor to be on this couch anytime I get to sit on it.
Well,
so
I mean, really, you're actually in this studio on a regular basis, but kind of on the other side with your Newsmakers podcast.
Opposite side, I was on the desk for Morning Live on Monday. I'm looking at our sports set over there, where I got the start, and I remember, interviewing with you at the time, and you mentioned the Ticats Audio Network. Obviously, that was a big step for me, was leaving a full-time job with a team that I knew, and being there every day, and then coming here to do weekends. I guess hard work was rewarded. I don't know if hard work was rewarded.
No, hard work was. No, you can say that. I think that's fair, because I think that's the reason why you got hired.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and many of us in this business, you got to kind of put in your time. You did your weekends. Not necessarily full time, but I mean, your talent obviously was proven. And I think it's all the way we fast forward to what you're doing now with the Newsmakers podcast, where you're not necessarily. I think people identified you because of what you did in the past as a sports guy, but I'm going to harken all the way back to your radio days at CKTV, where you were reading the news, and now you're back doing news again.
Yeah, everything comes full circle, and seeing it all laid out there on the graphic. I've been very fortunate to get to work 30 minutes from where I grew up for most of my career. There was a stint in Kelowna that was it was my first full-time job in the industry. That was only real short because I came back for TSN, but 10 years of my life has been spent on the air. Less than 30 minutes from where I grew up. So not a lot of people in this business can say that and can claim that. But it's been a whirlwind of a career. I really like what I'm doing now. Yeah, the podcast stuff has come naturally thanks to the Ticats Audio Network and the experience I got there. I've always been someone who loves to talk, like from the day I was born, basically.
You don't do that in this business unless you want to talk, right?
Yeah, and so, have I talked my way into a few jobs? I'm sure I have. And getting to talk to interesting people and just ask questions and just have conversations. And that's what we get to do with podcasts. When you're a reporter, you get a certain amount of time to tell a story. You have to choose which words very selectively. When you're a podcast, you can just keep talking until somebody gets in your ear and say, okay, let's wrap this up. And even then, I've really enjoyed being a part of this community, because it is somewhere that is near and dear to me. You mentioned Fonthill. Obviously, Chris Van Zyl owns the pedestal. Steve Bauer too, I guess we can include him. But Chris Van Zyl, CFL legend, who I'm hopeful, is something happens with him soon.
Absolutely, for
right?
Sure. We just don't know.
We've talked about free agency a lot the last few weeks, but Chris Van Zyl, number one, both St. Alexander grads. It's been quite a career for sure, and very fortunate to have get opportunities and to be able to take them and run with them. I think I've done okay with
well, and you say, and you're honestly, your career is just beginning. Like, it really is. Like, I can say that. I think, and not embarrassing you, but your career has still got so much more to go. But you look at the steps that you followed, and I think TSN Radio was a big one, because I think it was one of those jobs where you had to do everything. And at the time, it seems like so much. But then really, when you look back, it's like how beneficial it was.
Oh, absolutely. I was hired as a producer for TSN Radio. I left an on-air job in Kelowna reading the news to be a behind-the-scenes operations guy to be a third wheel type guy who works the board and maybe pops in with an opinion every once in a while. And that was really tough for me because I did love to talk, and I did think I had opinions on a lot of things that were going on, especially locally. And again, it just became the opportunity. Oh, you need somebody to read updates this day. Okay, I can do that. And that's one of the things that I was always taught growing up in school, and I'm not sure if I see it as much these days, of just saying yes to opportunities that are given to you. A lot of times, it might be inconvenient for you at the time, or might be something you don't want to do, but if you're good, and if you're talented, and if you work hard, and if you get a little lucky every once in a while, those doors will open. And I think that's what happened. And you mentioned TSN Radio right away. I was working with Jim Taddy, right? And, the Tat Man, obviously a legend. And,
guy.
And getting to see the way he operates and the professionalism he brought to the job is something that still sticks with me, is that, I'm a little more lax. I'm a little more laid back. I like to joke around. This guy was a pro's pro, right? And when he was on, as soon as that mic switched, that's who he was. And, I still really grateful for my time at TSN Radio. It's the little station that should have, right? Especially looking back now, I know we've talked about it on numerous occasions that, if TSN Radio launched today, just all the things that they could talk about it and all the successes that they could have. But it was a really great time for me. Worked with a great crew there, opened the door for the Ticats for sure, which led me to my next steps. And obviously, really, really grateful for my time at TSN Radio. It was the first time I got laid off too, which is another thing in this business that you kind of exactly. Everybody always said it. Everybody told you, even throughout school, you're not in the business until you're told you no longer have a job. And, it was tough for me. It was a transition of, I'd worked a job, whether it was slicing meat at Sobeys or selling cell phones at Virgin Mobile. I had worked literally since I was 15. And then just to be told that you got nothing to do, it was really an adjustment for me. And I'm glad it happened, earlier in my career. But TSN Radio was, I always say, if the station was around today, it could have done a lot better. But it was definitely something that opened a big door for me, for sure.
Well, I thought it really gave a lot of time and a lot of attention to Hamilton sports and the Hamilton sports scene that is continuing to grow. And, I think of what Hamilton sports was when I first started here at CHCH compared to what it is right now. And there's, you've done it here at this job where you get 6 minutes. And it's impossible. Like you want to give love to everyone. You almost have to become selective on a daily basis to give a little bit to a love here and a little bit of love, and there's always going to be someone said, "Hey, what about us?" Right?
Shout out Kilty Bees, by the way, with their big win last night, Game 7 over Welland. I didn't get to that on Morning Live on Monday, and I felt bad, obviously.
But it's impossible.
But there's so much going on.
There's so much more. Like there's a community now, and you extend it to Niagara. We extend it to St. Catharines. We try to give love to the Ice Dogs, and of course Oakville, Burlington as well too, who are watching CHCH. But it's become such a monster right now, and that's a good thing. And you're right. I think if TSN Radio was still around here, it might have stood a better chance. But moving on, though, the Ticats, and you talked about the fact that it gave you another opportunity. But again, this one was kind of a multimedia thing that really, I think, pushed you over the edge.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And the funny thing was, I had sat down with someone with the Ticats while I was still at TSN Radio. So I was kind of looking for that next step anyway. So while I was still at TSN Radio, I reached out to someone with the Ticats and said, hey, I really like what I do for you. I really like this aspect of the job, because I had started Ticats Today at that point. I was the sideline reporter, and I really did like the intricacies of being there every day, because it is awesome. Like you pull up to work and it's Tim Hortons field, right? Your office is the 7th floor press box. It's got a beautiful view of the escarpment, the lake. Even you even love the mills and all that stuff. So it was really an interesting opportunity for me, because when I took the job, it was still like, well, what do we call you? Like, what's your job? Like, we know you're going to be doing all this content stuff. You're going to be creating. And, there's a silly little video we put out where I'm like, this is what I'll be doing. And I was just kind of listing all the things. Like, maybe there'll be podcasts. Like, we don't know. Like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. Like, if Ticats related, you're going to hear about it. And, yeah, it was one of those opportunities where, I had a great boss at the time in Mike Hartle who gave me a lot of freedom and said, hey, if you're giving us content, that's all we need. That's what we want. And then, Dave Cadeau came on board and it became the Ticats Audio Network, which, you mentioned that kind of the face and voice of it. And I do take a lot of pride in what was built with the Ticats Audio Network, and, you taking over the pregame, taking back the pregame, and then Braden taking on the daily role. Like it is still something that's very near and dear to me because it was a lot of work that went into it. It was a lot of freedom, but you had to produce the content, and every day it's tough. Being in good times it's easy, but being in those tough times it's hard, right? I was there the 0-8 year, the June Jones, transition from Ken Austin, the Grey Cup losses, the back-to-back Grey Cup losses. I was in Calgary, I was in Hamilton, right? So, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Drew Edwards and Steve Milton, who were such a huge part of me developing as a reporter, especially a beat reporter, because Drew just kind of did it his own way, right? Yes. Drew was never afraid to ask anything, ever. He was never afraid of like, what will coach think if I ask this? Will he be mad? Especially with Ken Austin, like having Ken Austin there.
Legendary.
Right? And June Jones is a little bit, it was going from Ken Austin to June Jones was just a mind trip, man. But yeah, Drew just knew how to ask a question, and watching him work, you really put me on the right path. And then Steve Milton is the greatest mentor a sports guy in this city could have asked for. He is as neurotic as he is a legend, and he is a great friend and a great mentor. And it was just so fortunate to get to be there every day, learn from him, ask him questions, see the way he writes and the way he talks. It was just how he interacted with athletes, how he told their stories in a unique way, really set me up well, I think, beyond news, just how to interact professionally in that kind of scenario. But yeah, Ticats Audio Network will always have a little special place in my heart, and thankful for those few years and getting to be inside the belly of the beast. For sure.
The best part for me with the Ticats Audio Network is, as you said, what it's become, because what it has become is now a model for other teams around the league. There are, as you watch other team BCs right now doing something that's very, very similar, and everyone's asking questions. And I know you and I have shared this same job where we're talking to other media members, and they're like, you guys are doing a good thing out there. Like, this is the way to do it. And because team-oriented content and you putting out the message on a daily basis, that's what it's all about right now. Team build, the Bills are doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's so easy too to build it, right? And I get there are some, like, when you're there every day, there are a lot of times you'll get questions from fans. You'll be like, why aren't you asking this specific question?
Well,
right? And you're an employee of the team. Like, you can't be critical. And there is some truth. I'm not going to come out and say Orlando Steinauer needs to be fired. Like, what is going on here? Like, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
As much as I never wanted to, but even if I did want to, I just couldn't go out there and say, because I am an employee of the team, but also I want to know why this guy's not practicing. I want to know why, what's happening in this positional battle. And I think just being at a practice every day and getting into that routine of, oh, crap, 4 people are going to come out here and, I'm the only one. A lot of times, especially, the way media is, we know this, it's tough to get there. It's tough for us to get, it's nearly impossible for us to get there. So I became kind of that number one source. And every time somebody came out, there were 3 players and coach, 5 days a week. And that's really tough to come up with, 10 minutes worth of questions. So it really gave me an idea of like, okay, I got to think on my toes, which comes in handy a lot now hosting this podcast, where what if there is an awkward silence? Okay, what question did you have in the back of your mind that maybe you weren't going to ask, but now you do have to ask? And listening too, which is a huge skill when you're interviewing people. Hearing what coach said or hearing what a player said, and then trying to pick something out of that for your next question. So I think, the Ticats Audio Network, back to what you were saying about the model of it, it's not just other teams, it's other leagues that are taking this on. We saw the Washington Wizards and the Capitals have launched their own, digital channel. And I think for teams, it's effective because you're getting your messaging out and you're getting people to talk about it. I don't know why the Leafs don't do that. Like, the Leafs don't have like a daily produced show. I'd listen to that though, right? Like, I'd listen to if somebody summarized, oh, here's what Keefe said about this. Because like I didn't reinvent the wheel with Ticats today, right? It's like, here's some sound, here's a guest of somebody who knows. Like, it's 30 minutes, it's easy to listen to. I think it's a really interesting concept to produce your own. I think there are going to be criticisms of you can't be as critical as you want. You're not asking tough questions, which I would push back on. But yeah, I think it is something.
It gives you the opportunity sometimes to ask more than just the game day stuff.
Yeah.
You can get into someone's life and,
absolutely.
and as a fan, if you're a consumer of that fan, you're dying for that content, because the way media is right now, TV's not going to, local TV can't do it. Just don't have the time. Newspapers are getting cut back. That's what I think. It's a great opportunity for like a Ticats Radio Network to do something like that.
Absolutely, and Braden Neville does a great job with it now in terms of like the personal questions with players, and yeah, I think players have had a frosty relationship with media for a while now, and a lot of media, the olden times, the newspaper, the daily newspaper columnists like that, those jobs don't exist anymore.
No.
So you really don't need that confrontational. And Steve Simmons, I know you've had him on this show. He's kind of a one of those guys who's left of it, who is like, his job is to get you talking. If you're mad at him, then he's doing his job.
Absolutely.
Right? And he doesn't care what the players think. For this younger generation of players, I find sometimes too, like they're really not in it for a fight. Like they want simple questions, but they also want those questions about their own lives.
Yes.
It's not just what they do every day, right? It's their job. And I would be annoyed if I had to do an interview after every single day of my job.
Yep.
If after we do this podcast, we got to go out there and face the media. But, that was a great podcast. I really put in a good effort. I thought the lights were a little bright. But like, because that's what you're doing, and especially when things are going bad, right? Especially when you're losing.
The worst.
So I think, to your point, getting to showcase players' personalities is a huge part of it, and they want to be showcased, right? Players want to show that they're more than just who they are on the football field or hockey rink or baseball diamond, but especially football. I find there's a lot of characters, and the Ticats Audio Network does a great job of showcasing that personality for sure.
Last thing here, your experience here at CHCH has been, again, diverse. You've been all over the place on every show I can think of.
Yes.
Like, I mean, and that's a big help. I mean, again, it goes to show your talent. I've seen you do news reporting. Obviously, your podcast currently right now, and morning show, weekend sports. I think that kind of diversity. Have you ever been bored? You haven't been bored here.
I don't like being bored. I don't like the repetition. I don't like doing the same thing, time and time again. So I do think the diversity of what I do here really, keeps me on my toes. One day I could be interviewing federal minister of whatever, and then the next day it's a nice soft story about this person's turning 100. I've never done one of those stories, so I don't know why I'm using that as an example, but it keeps me on my feet. I've filled in for Emily Vukovic in the morning show, and that's one of those jobs where it's like it's quick. You got to think on your feet. You got to keep going. There's nothing. It's new every day, and I think that's what I like about news is that it's new every day. There's something different. There's a different story to tell. I think having done almost every on-air job there is to do in this building, I've been really fortunate, and I think I've done okay, so I'm still here. So not going anywhere. So we'll see.
Ready to square it off?
Let's do this. Let's do this,
folks. Hey, let's talk some hockey, folks. Hey, I'm going to ask you a question, folks. Everyone join in, because I think this is a question that really is multi-diverse. I don't know what you want to think. We'll start with it. If the Maple Leafs don't win the Stanley Cup, and who's to think that they're going to win it anyway, what should be considered an acceptable playoff run that will leave you with a little bit of hope going into next season, Louie?
Conference finals. Conference finals or bust. I went back. I've looked at the last 10 years of the Shana Plan, 2014. Brendan, April 11th, 2014. So this year will mark 10 years of Brendan Shanahan. Missed playoffs, drafted Austin Matthews first overall. First round. Second round to be determined. If the Leafs don't make it out of the second round, I would want to see wholesale changes to the Leafs. And that would start at the top with Brendan Shanahan. I don't know what he hangs his hat on what has been a successful era for him. Yes, the value. And this is the thing. I think MLSE will look at it and say, what was our what was our net worth before he started? 1.1 billion, and now we're 1.7 billion. Yeah, Brendan Shanahan's worth $600 million to them. What is he worth to any fan who's cheered for the Leafs, who's bought tickets for the Leafs, who's paid hundreds of dollars for jerseys and tickets? Nothing. What do I have to show for it as a Leaf fan? The Brendan Shanahan plan. Austin Matthews, first overall, perfect. You know, the future all-time leading scorer for the Maple Leafs.
No doubt.
But you can't beat Boston. You can't beat Florida. You can't get out of the second round. You have to make the conference finals this year. I would want to see.
Haven't they made progress though? They won a round last year.
They won a round, Bubba. They won a round. That's it. They lost to Florida, which is a different team. Like, what they do? They gave Sheldon Keefe an extension. Like, how does that make sense? Like, how does that make sense? Like, you don't reward people for not even doing their job. Making the playoffs is the bare minimum for this team. I'm sorry. Yes, that has been set. If you can't make it out of the second round, then what are we doing? Why am I? What have you told fans that you're doing to show them that you're on a different path? 10 years is a very long time, and that's why I think it always goes back to Brendan Shanahan. Because what does Brendan Shanahan have to show for this last 10 years, which is everything? What do Leaf fans have to show for the last 10 years? Not much. Do
you think you're losing interest in this team? Do you think the actual Maple Leaf fans are losing interest in their own team?
I am 100%, Bubs. I think of the day-to-day minutia of the Leafs. Like, oh, Marner's playing tonight. I'll watch. But I'm not scheduling my day around Leaf games right now. I'm not, okay, there's a game at 7. I'm watching all 60 minutes of that. I need to see how it ends. Because when I do commit to watching them, Bubs, they just let me down. Like they did on Saturday, where I'm so pumped up to watch 60 minutes of Leafs hockey, have a couple beers with my friends, and then they lose in the last 90 seconds. Like, come on.
How did they blow that?
How did they blow it? Like, how did they blow it? So that's why, like, I've said it for the last few years now. Leafs can do whatever they want in the regular season. Leafs could win the President's Trophy in the regular season. If they go down 2-0 against the Boston Bruins in round 1, why should I be excited for them? Why? And the thing that doesn't help is that they don't really have a whole lot of personality to them, right? No. They're not joking around. Like, yeah, they'll do their little videos, but it's a very boring team.
John Tavares.
Right? And even that, like, I mean, Morgan Rielly should be captain of this team, right? He was drafted. He's a hometown product. He's been through the bad years. Not hometown, but grew up through the progress here. So, yeah, it's Eastern Conference or finals or bust. And even that, because I was in the building. I was there when they lost to Florida. I was reporting for this station, and I was there when that overtime goal was scored and fans were funneling out. And so what do you think of it? We'll get them next year. It's like, really? You just paid $1,600 to go see this team? You probably missed the first 10 minutes if you were sitting in the silvers or platinums or whatever they call them, which is another thing that's been bothering me lately. If you watch a game, even against the Bruins, there's at least 40, 50, 60 seats in the golds and platinums that are empty. I get it. That's Toronto. That's the culture. But as like a fan who can't afford to go to a game, it bothers me a little bit.
As it should. Canucks defenseman Nikita Zadorov said that if he was building a team, he would pick Nathan MacKinnon over Connor McDavid and even your guy, Austin Matthews, because he's a winner. He's won a Stanley Cup. Now, in team sports, Louie, do you have to win a title to be considered great?
I don't think you have to, but you have to be that much better if you don't. I think, Charles Barkley is a great, right?
Yeah.
He's a great, but he never won. Someone who is at Charles Barkley, maybe a little less talented than Charles Barkley, but did win, will probably be considered great. I think winning is a huge part. And I say that as someone who has watched one team he cheers for in his lifetime lift a trophy, that being the Toronto Raptors. I think winning is a super important part of being great. I don't think you have to win to be great, but I think it helps. It helps those borderline great players achieve that status. So, yeah, is Austin Matthews a great player? 100%. Is Mitch Marner a great player? He's not bad. If he wins one, then maybe I'll think about it a little differently. But, I don't think you have to, but it helps a heck of a lot.
You think of a player like Raymond Bourque, maybe going a little bit behind your time, though, but he had to go to Colorado, leave Boston after almost 2 decades there to get that trophy. And he would tell you that may have been, even after 20 great years of Boston, the greatest moment of his career. Like, it's crazy. Dan Marino, another example. got to a Super Bowl in his first year, never got back there again, and then left the game as the record holder in almost every significant passing record. But who would you rather have, him or Joe Montana?
Yeah, I'd still probably say Marino. I think, I think it was just Marino was so good. So good. The fact he didn't win was a crime. I would say Barkley, same idea. Like, the fact he didn't win a ring, nobody feels worse about that than them, by the way. Like,
for sure.
That's the other thing, is they can rest their laurels on their individual talent, but sports is such a team game where you do get to celebrate. And when you see teams celebrate winning a championship, and I've been fortunate enough to be on the field for CFL, Grey Cups, still a huge deal, right?
Amazing.
Still a huge deal to get to win. The actual relief of winning is it puts them in another category, I would say. Yeah. So it's super important. I'd rather probably have Dan Marino. Actually, no, I wouldn't, because Bills for life. I'd rather have Jim Kelly, who also never won.
Another guy, right?
I'd also have Jim Kelly, who would never won. But yeah, I think winning is such a team thing too, though, that you can't hang your hat on if you didn't win, because it could come down to one or two things that were out of your control. It could have come down to a fluke. So yeah, I think you have to. I don't know, Bubs. That's a tough one.
So it really is
because I think you can be great without winning one, but just winning one, it just does that much more for you.
Baseball now, which is coming up, and boy, people are getting very, very excited about the Toronto Blue Jays because, again, like the Maple Leafs, there are some question marks. They've made the postseason in 3 of the past 4 seasons, yet they have not won a pennant since 1993. Very much like the Maple Leafs, this team is under pressure. What are your expectations for 2024?
My expectations, or what do I think is going to happen?
Well,
I think they're two different things. I think my expectations are this team competes for the AL East. I think the front of their rotation, yes, there are going to be some injury concerns, with this team along the way. But I think with this group that you have, they should be competing for an AL East title. What does Baltimore have? They have a deep farm system that they've been able to bring guys up. Why doesn't Toronto have that? Right? This is the same idea. Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro, Brendan Shanahan, they're all in that same category. They all serve a higher power. For them, it's Rogers. For Shanahan, it's MLSE. But, as a fan perspective, what do I have to show for it? What do I have to show for Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro? Not much. Not much. I don't have Bo Bichette locked up to a team-friendly deal for the next 10 years. I don't have Vlad Guerrero Jr. locked up for the next 10 years. I have this year, going into this season, I have John Schneider as a manager and probably a less talented lineup than they had last year.
Sure.
No,
for sure.
If you're going to tell me IKF is going to be as good as Matt Chapman, that's going to be hard for me to believe, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think their pitching staff was outstanding. They stayed healthy last year. That's very fortunate to stay healthy, and we're already seeing Jordan Romano dealing with some UCL injuries.
I'm not sure about that bullpen this year.
Right? And something that was so superb. So my expectation is that they compete for the AL East. What do I think is going to happen? I think they're going to be a middle-of-the-pack team. I think they're going to struggle some stretches where they're going to win 2 games in 2 weeks, and I think they're going to look like world beaters. It depends on if this team can situationally hit, which they haven't been able to do in the John Schneider era.
Yep.
Right? Even going back before that. Which goes back to generating runs. How many times can we watch Vlad Guerrero Jr. ground into a double play to end the inning? It became a point of unwatchable because you just knew runner on base, less than 2 outs. This isn't going to end well for the Blue Jays. So they need to do something. Like you said, they've made the playoffs in 3 of the last 4 years. It's harder to make the playoffs in baseball than it is hockey. Mm-hmm. And again, I went to some games at the Dome last year that were just, the energy was just sucked out, right? There was just nothing going on. And when the roof's closed, it's even worse. But you need to give reasons, especially for Toronto fans who have, if TFC's good, maybe I'll spend my money there this year. If the Argos,
it's a bandwagon city.
Exactly.
No
the Raptors, you could probably do a Raptors game on, this week for not SGA's game on Friday, though, by the way. That's a big one. But you need that team to win, so it's exciting. So my expectation, AL East, contend for the AL East. my belief, you're going to be a middle of the pack team with this lineup, unless they do something like at the trade deadline, unless they move some pieces, unless, Vlad Guerrero Jr. gets back to what he was a few years ago. Middle of the pack team, I think.
In 2018, Joey Votto, speaking of the Blue Jays, was as a member of the Cincinnati Reds, he was asked about fellow Canadian MLB player James Paxton, and then he told the media that he didn't give a rat's ass about Canadian baseball and even the Blue Jays because Paxton is a Canadian. Today, he wrote an apology letter to all media members and to the public. Do you accept his apology because now he's a member of the Blue Jays?
I don't know if I accept it because now you don't think he would have written the apology if he wasn't a Blue Jay?
No, I don't think there's a reason to, right? Because I think he's being asked a question. It's like, I think a lot of people, because of social media, because of, reporters that never forget. And it's like, well, 2018, I asked you this question just kind of saying, hey, as a cheerleader for Canadian baseball, what do you think about this guy? He's doing really, really well. And Votto Votto can be very sharp at times. And he was sharp in making those comments and say that he didn't care. And now he says, well, I was kind of jealous that I didn't get the attention. I don't know what that all means now. But he's now a member of the Blue Jays, and I don't know. I think it's easy for me to cheer for him at this point right now because I want the Blue Jays to do well. I want him to do well. They got him for a reason. But I can't forget what he said there because he meant it at the time.
Yeah, it was pretty strong language. And why is it taking it this long to apologize? I would say he probably did feel underappreciated as a Canadian baseball person at the time. And, I think a lot of that is he played in Cincinnati, bud. He didn't play for the Dodgers. He didn't play for the Yankees. He played in Cincinnati, and he was very good with Cincinnati, right? Consistent 300 hitter, a couple of Gold Gloves, I think. He was a great player. Do I accept the apology? Yeah, I guess so. Like, it's better that he did apologize than he did. First of all, I had to translate the note in cursive, by the way, the little chicken scratch. You could have just written it or texted it to us. Would have been a lot easier, Joey Votto. You know what? I think he was genuine. It was 4 pages. It wasn't a note. Speaking of that, it wasn't just a note screenshot like, hey, sorry for what I said. And I think there was some legitimate jealousy that James Paxton, not as a member of the Blue Jays, was being celebrated. And it is a weird question to be put on the spot. Like, isn't this great for Canada baseball?
But isn't that what we do in Canadian media, though? We love to, celebrate our own and then go to one of our own and say, isn't that great what he's doing as a Canadian? Because we're so underrepresented in a sport like Major League Baseball. It's part of the game.
It is. It's the game that we play, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the game that they play. It goes back to what I was saying on the Ticats Audio Network, man. Like, some guys just get really annoyed by media. Some people have had their words twisted by media. Some people don't trust the media. Some people just flat out don't like talking. If I had $1 for every time I've asked to talk to somebody, no, they don't do media. And it's not fun for me. It's not fun for me to try. You don't want to talk to me? I don't want to talk to you, buddy. You're not that special. I can get somebody else. But yeah, Joey Votto, he had to apologize, I think, because someone was coming out with the story about it. Somebody was going to bring it up at some point. Like I said, I think it was genuine. If what he said, I don't remember him going to Jamie Campbell afterwards and saying, regretting the comments right away. And he might have. That's the thing. We don't remember the backtracks. We remember the big moments. So I believe him when he said he went to Jamie Campbell. He was on Sportsnet live and apologized. So he has already apologized for this. But now that, he's got a chance. I think it is funny that it came after his home run. He's like, oh shoot, I might be able to make this team, man. Oh crap, I gotta forgive myself. I gotta get everybody to forgive me. But yeah, to your point, do they need him though? It's a great story. Yeah, Canada, if he's good, but if he's gonna hit 188 all year, right? I'm not saying he will, but if he does, then is it going to be a great story when you have to DFA him? No. I don't know. I accept his apology, though. Joey Votto, I accept your apology.
I'm with you, Joey. So let's move on. While speaking to a major radio station out in Edmonton, 630 CHAD, Elks assistant general manager G. Roy Simon was being asked about his team and then made a comment about quarterback Trey Ford that he's not quite there to be the leader of an organization. He's not quite there to be the face of the franchise. Louie, what does that mean to you?
If I was Trey Ford, I'd be pretty pissed off hearing that. And I'm not sure if that's what Geroy Simon was trying to do, was trying to light a fire under him, because I think Chris Jones is probably pretty good at lighting fires under his players. So I was really taken back by these comments. Like, Trey Ford is a young quarterback who has really been screwed around in Edmonton, I think, right? You know, he gets a chance and then he sits for 2 weeks, and then he's the fourth string quarterback, and then he's the starting quarterback. And when you look at his raw talent, we saw what he did, with Laurier, right? Like he was a
Waterloo.
Yep, yeah, he was a superstar. We saw what he did at Ian Meyer, right? Like this is a guy who probably has the skills, and I really don't get what publicly calling out your players like this does. And that's why I was confused by this is a very public place, like the home of the Elks. Like, what is Geroy Simon hoping to get out of this? To piss him off? Because, like, I'd be pissed. Like, I'd wake up this morning and be like, well, what am I doing this for? If I'm not ready, like, what do I need to do to be a leader? And why didn't we have this conversation in private? Like, that'd be my thing. Because,
well, wasn't the tea leaves written already when the fact when they got McLeod Bethel Thompson?
Yeah, but like, so what are you gonna do? You're just gonna have a pissed off, backed up quarterback? Because I've been through that, man. Like, talking about the Ticats, there have been a lot of guys who think they deserve to be the starter and probably did deserve to be the starter at the time. You know, I go back to that 0-8 year we were talking about. Zach Collaros sat on the bench, a future Hall of Famer. Sat on the bench, a two-time MOP, sat on the bench behind Jeremiah Masoli, who I still hope has a great career this year in Ottawa and gets back on track. But, you know, like, who are these? Yeah, I always like to say, who are these coaches and executives who think they know everything? Because really, sometimes you don't. And if this is what Geroy Simon's trying to do, is to light a fire under his young quarterback, to be better at camp, to push McLeod Bethel Thompson, to try and be a more vocal leader in the room. Because, yeah, it's going to be tough for McLeod Bethel Thompson to go into that room anyway and be like, hey, guys, you know, like, I'm a Grey Cup winning quarterback, so you gotta listen to me, right? Like, yeah, he's a new guy. Where were you last year? Why did you walk away for the game? Like, well, you know, I get some family stuff that was going on, but yeah, like, who is the leader in that locker room? Is it the law firm of MCB? Like, that's a hoagieism, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I've heard that before.
Because, like, yeah, like, who is Chris Jones the de facto leader? Because I know a lot of coaches who never step foot in the locker room except for after the game, and that's it. Halftime to rile up the troops. Like, they say a locker room is a player's space. Like, I really don't get what an assistant GM throwing his young Canadian quarterback under the bus on a bad team. Like, it's not beat around the bush. Edmonton hasn't been a good team. So what's your excuse the last 3 years? Why didn't you call him out in year one for his leadership? He's been there. I believe this is going into his third season.
It's going to his third year. And you think about how many games they've won in that three-year period, and it's been Trey Ford who's been the guy that's winning the games.
July 1st here in Hamilton, his first win is he beat the Ticats. So yeah, I think, like I say, if I'm Trey Ford, I'm waking up this morning wondering, okay, what does this look like? Do you want me or not? Like, what would it take to be a better leader in your eyes? So, yeah, good Niagara Falls boy. I don't like the way they're treating him.
I'd like to see him in black and gold.
Hey, yeah, me too.
Which he wore before Waterloo.
There you go, yeah.
You know, interesting conversation in the golf world. I mean, I don't talk too much golf, but this has really been such a topic for 2 years that is just grinding on people. That's actually become bigger than the sports. Players Championship, really the fifth major, just completed at Sawgrass this weekend, and Scotty Scheffler winning. But a lot of people saying, you know what? But John Rahm wasn't there, DJ wasn't there, and it's for the first time we're starting to see this kind of conversation that, well, you know, winning a big PGA tournament is big, but if some of the live guys aren't there, especially the top live guys, who arguably John Rahm could be the world number one. So what I'll ask you this, Louie, has the PGA and live golf divide kind of just turned you off golf?
It hasn't a week-to-week basis, I think. You know, other than the Arnold Palmer last week and the players this week, I would turn on golf on a Saturday, because Thursday, Friday, I'll check the leaderboard every once in a while, but I would turn golf on TV on a Saturday, look at the leaderboard and think, who the hell are these guys? Right. And I'm sure that's great for the sport, for them, all these new names. But a lot of the time it's like, where are the John Rahms? And I think it has turned me off in a sense that I'm not engaged week to week to week as I am. That being said, I feel we haven't hit our first major yet. I feel like when the Masters rolls around in a couple of weeks, that'll kind of hit me a bit. Okay, this back, right?
Right.
Which is the fact that live players will be able to play in the majors, right? And I think it makes the special events that much more special, like the Players' Championship, the Jewel, 5th major, Scotty Scheffler taking up $4.5 million. But I also do think it does take away from Scotty Scheffler's accomplishments a little bit.
Sure it does.
Because there's always going to be this asterisk of, well, did he play against the best? Did he play against the best of the best week in and week out? Like, he's a 2-time reigning PGA Tour Player of the Year. He's already won, $11 million this year. Back-to-back wins, first player ever to win back-to-back Players' Championships. But did he play against the best? Did he play against, Dustin Johnson week in and week out? Or John Rahm, who, yes. Or Cam Smith, who was such a great dominant player for his short time on tour. I wish I could get more involved in live. I've tried. We know we had it here, right?
Yeah.
I knew we were broadcasting it, and I still couldn't tune in. I think it's the shotgun start that kind of throws me off. It's the loud music on the course. It's not really golf.
It's different. It's different. And I'll tell you, you know what, though? One of the reasons I do like live, one, is I kind of like this. You look at those first 3 tournaments that live had, and the leaderboard, after when it was all said and done, was unbelievable. Because all those top players were in competition or within 2 or 3 shots of the lead for victories. Of course, now I could care less about the money. That means nothing to me, really, because that's in all sports. Who wins what, how much money. I've actually learned to appreciate the team aspect of it because it gives... golf, you're an independent contractor, and it gives you opportunity at earnings as a team, which is kind of a fun thing for me in the back end of it. But to your shotgun start thing, you know what? To watch a PGA tournament, let's just say the one day on a Sunday, you've got to turn on the Golf Network at about 9 in the morning, and then you start watching, and then you transfer over at 3 o'clock to CBS.
You got to change the channel. Don't forget to change the
channel, and then you're watching on CBS. So the hours invested to watch just one round of golf in the PGA or average PGA tournament, or even a major championship for that matter, are hours. You watch a live tournament, and it's your commitment. In a day where we want things quicker and quicker and quicker, it's done in 3.5 to 4 hours. And another thing that I think that someone told me, a real golf fan told me that I never really thought about, that when you watch a PGA tournament, you always talk about the weather. Well, the morning guys had, dry weather, but the late guys had...
Of course, played easy in the day. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that doesn't happen because everyone's playing at the same time in live. You don't get that issue. So to me, there are some reasons that I do like the live tour a little bit more than the other. But yeah, I think you're right. When we do see the major championships and everyone's back together, funny enough, when you look at the Masters last year and you look at that leaderboard, mostly live guys.
Yeah, that was, and listen, there's some good things that live's done. I think guys appreciate, the 54 aspect. Who wouldn't? We've been clamoring for 4-day work weeks in North America forever. They basically get it with the 3-day work week. And I think showcasing golfers' personalities. I think we've seen the PGA Tour try to do that a bit more. We've had live interviews as they're walking, between shots, which is awesome. And when you're the only show in town, it's easy to take that for granted. And I think the PGA Tour did that for a very, very, very long time, in which we don't have to worry about these competing tours because nobody's going to be able to pay them like we can. Well, here came a league that could.
Here come the Saudis.
Here come the Saudi Arabians, right? It pushes PGA to be better. And, we've seen Rory kind of flip the way he's talked about live golf.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, a little bit. I think, somebody, I don't know what happened there, but, from somebody who was couldn't give them the time of day to, I appreciate what they're trying to do and feed their families. And Yeah, I think it is pushing golf to be better. It's pushing the product to be better. And like I said, I think the majors are just going to be that much more amped up. I really enjoyed this past weekend. I was invested in, Wyndham Clark and watching Scotty. He had that eagle hole out and hole 2 or whatever. And that really set the tone for the rest of the day. Because don't get me wrong, there is nothing, it sounds terrible. There's nothing better than like a Sunday afternoon. You got the barbecue on, you hear the birds chirping, the windows are open. Like it's amazing. It's a great way to spend a Sunday in non-football time.
Yes.
And I think we just need those stars in this PGA Tour to start emerging, other than Scotty Scheffler. Because a lot of times you can turn on the leaderboard and be like, I know one of those guys.
And you know what?
See one of those names.
You're completely right. And with all due respect to the guys we cheer for here, like a Mackenzie Hughes and Corey Connors for right here from Ontario too. But you're right. When we watched the Valspar this week, who's that guy?
Yeah.
Canadian and USA attendance records for women's hockey have been broken in the PWHL that are having quite a debut season. Well, I'll flip this. Do you expect that excitement in 2025 for the debut of the new Canadian Women's Soccer League? I know you're close to soccer. Your thoughts here?
I hope so. I really, really hope so, but I don't think so. I think just hockey, first of all, I think it would, I don't know if the disservice is the right word, but you think of what Sarah Nurse, Laura Fortino, these women have had to go through, how many leagues folding, this is the first go at it for the NWSL and or whatever they're going to call it, right? The CWSL. Yeah. And that's the other thing is a lot of Canada's best players are currently playing in the best women's league, one of the best women's league in the world, and that is the one in the States, or the Premier League in the U.S., or in Europe. So I think women's soccer faces an uphill battle for sure. I would hope that there's the same excitement around hockey, but hockey's been Canada's sport forever, right? It has been what we watch on Saturdays for our entire lives. It's been, the teams have been set. They predate most of us who watch it. So it's going to be an uphill battle for the Canadian Women's Soccer League. I hope they have the right leadership in place, but we see what's going on with the Canadian Premier League, and just they're growing, absolutely, but they've also taken time to grow out of the gate. I think like the PWHL, I hope this has the financial backing to survive some slower starts, or if maybe smaller attendances. I really hope. But my thing is, I think, soccer, in all honesty, it's people 10 years ago, 6 years ago, you couldn't pay to put it on TV, right? You literally couldn't pay to put it on TV. TSN didn't want it. Sportsnet didn't want it. And now, because of a good run, we talked about Toronto fans being bandwagon. Canada fans kind of go the same way, right? If they're going to the World Cup, yes, I'm going to watch every game. If they're not, then who's other than Alphonso Davies? Unless you're a diehard sports fan, it's hard to tune in. So I wish this women's league all the best, but I think it'll be difficult to get crowds like you do for the PWHL.
You're right there. I think there's a challenge here because it's funny because you look at youth enrollment in soccer, and it's been on the rise. It just, especially for young girls. Yet for some reason, you're right. It's not hockey. Hockey translates for all of us, and I'm talking now on a viewership standpoint. And for this league, the Canadian Women's Soccer League, or whatever they're going to call it, it needs eyes. It needs sponsorship. Sponsorship comes because of eyes. And this PWHL can back this right now. They're breaking records like mad. They're putting 18. Look what's going to happen when Toronto play Montreal in Montreal. 21,000 people are going to be there. There's a buzz about that league, but I think it's because it's hockey. Yeah. And I just don't know, even though there's such large numbers of kids playing soccer, I don't know at this level, when you get to a pro level, if we're still in love with soccer. Again, I think it becomes very, we talk about, you just brought it up a little while ago. Yeah, if TFC is a good product, I'll go and see it. Yeah. But if they've been the way they've been the last couple of years, I don't care.
John Herdman looks pretty good, though, with them now.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I know. It's Insigne. Just the celebration of that one goal he had a couple of weeks ago where he immediately ran to John Herdman to celebrate. And I think there are, and I know I mentioned the CPL earlier, the CPL is doing well. Here they are in their sixth year.
And there's been challenges.
There have been challenges. They're in their 6th year. I'm not sure where we're going to watch the games this year. That's, to be determined, right? But here we got a league that's been patient, that's been growing, that's doing the right things. You look at what Mike Morreale has done with the CEBL. It doesn't need to be PWHL level to be a success. And I think measuring it to that will be a little tough. Like, is it going to be as good as will it be as well attended? That's going to be tough because it's soccer. It's never going to be hockey. But if they can be consistent with it, if they can do it right, to your point, eyeballs. So whether that's YouTube, right, for free, that's what helped the CEBL get off the ground. So I really think there's a potential for this to succeed, and it should. We're a big country. We have a lot of talented athletes. We have a lot of big cities. We should be able to support a multi-team league for a professional game, right? Especially for the women's soccer team that's won a gold medal, a bronze medal, and consistently does well on the international stage. So to your point, Bubs, I'm not sure what is going to get the needle into overdrive, but it's doable. It's possible. I think you can do it.
Here's another question that I'm baffled by this. It has baffled me I've been in TV now for 30-something years and spent a dozen years at a national sports network. And I really pushed hard. Believe me, for people that know me and people that I worked with, they know I pushed real hard on this, but no results, especially back then. Why is U Sports not getting any coverage on the Canadian national sports networks? You have 2 tournaments that are about to kick off in the NCAA basketball tournament, which is in the United States, folks, and they're getting all kinds of love. Every game will be seen on TSN. I can't say the same for the national championship, the final 8 there for Canadian U Sports basketball on a male or female level. We just had an incredible run here in Hamilton with the volleyball, the U Sports National Championships. I could go down every single sport that gets amazing love on like a CBS Sports Network or an NBC Peacock network in the United States, even on a lower level, lower tier sports network, but they're getting the coverage. I can't even see a 30-second highlight pack on TSN or Sportsnet. Louie, why?
That's $1 million question, Bubba. I don't understand it. Also, shout out to Isaac Nurse, U Sports champion again. Gold medalist, yes. Alongside Cade Landry and Colton Kammerer, former Bulldogs, but of course Isaac, a Hamilton guy himself. So yeah, man, it really doesn't make any sense, especially when you turn on one of those national highlight shows and they're running a segment from a U.S.-based show talking about something. I'm like, you didn't have 30 seconds to cut together a pack of here's what happened. I have no explanation for it. And you've worked there. I have a lot of friends who've worked at the 2 places, and obviously TSN Radio was the exception to the rule with McMaster games, and I think a little bit of it falls on U Sports as well for not building them up as much as they do. I think, U Sports has always been a little political, at least in the time that I've been working with, university sports in the last 10 years, CIS before them. I just don't get it. The money's not there, I guess, right? It costs money to produce things, but when things are already produced by CBC, they do a great job of all the U Sports stuff. I wish I had an explanation. I wish somebody could tell me why you can't run a 2-minute pack, why you can't run a half. You can run the highlights of the month for May or the bloopers of the year
over
for hours and hours and hours and hours, but you can't put together a 30-minute show to offer you sports. And you know what a lot of these sports, a lot of these programs have? A lot of these schools, they have broadcasting programs. They have media studies programs. They have colleges that broadcast the games. you don't need to commit that much. And I've had really good conversations with people like Morreale who have had to go through, more unconventional routes to get, CPL people. Same idea. Like, why can't you show a CPL highlight? What is stopping you from showing Hamilton versus, Toronto, York versus Vancouver? These are two giant cities, but you can't show highlights of a game. Like, I have no explanation, and I wish I did. But it is super frustrating and super unfair to sports fans, to genuine sports fans in this country
that want to support.
I have that, but instead you're going to show me highlights of. I was supposed to say OKC, but they should always show OKC highlights, like Miami and the Bucks. Like, does it really matter? Like, what do I actually care about this? And I think with gambling, it's gotten even worse, right? I got to tell you the odds of this game. I got to build your parlay here. I don't have time to show you Canadian highlights. I would love to hear a justification from somebody at TSN who says, or Sportsnet, who says, yeah, this is why we don't do it.
Well, you know what, Louie, in the time that I did work at those stations, here's what I would get. And this is, again, we're going back almost 2 decades now of what I would hear, is that, I never, in all those years of trying to push, they're like, and I'm like, well, there's a YouTube stream of it we can't show. And again, we don't have to go 2 minutes on a highlight package for our Canadian National Basketball Championships. But what I did get was, I don't know, maybe we'll cut a pack. If it can get in the show, it can get in the show. And of course, it never got in the show, right? Because we would spend hours upon hours in a 1 hour show about talking about hockey, right? And I get it. I understand the need that hockey sells. I get it. But how can we not make something important? Because if TSN and Sportsnet have the ability, by putting the highlights on their shows, to make it important. We have a great dunk, the Edwards from the Timberwolves, that happened last night. That's going to be everywhere. I'll probably show it at 6 o'clock and I'll make it important to people. Well, if you show 30 seconds of a McMaster volleyball tournament, it makes it important to people.
And, we look at these athletes that are playing in it. Every person on the UNB team that won the gold medal in U Sports this weekend, including Isaac Nurse, had played on a CHL team. Like, these are high-level athletes. And to not give them the credit they deserve by not showing a 30-second highlight, it's a disservice to them, right? Because they do work hard. They are training just as hard as NCAA athletes and going to school just like NCAA athletes. And when we don't show that, it makes it think like, it's not that big of a deal. But for them, it might be the highlight of their career, professional, like sporting wise or, professionally. They made it to the peak and they can't even see themselves on, channels that call themselves sports leaders. Like, it is really tough. It is really frustrating. And to your point, Bubba, if you show it, they will come, right? To Field of Dream style. Like, if you show people, this is how exciting this game was. Wow. Check out this, U Sports gold medal game. I think it was it Queens who had the buzzer beater? Right?
Brock and yeah, you're right.
No time left. A buzzer beater is great in any sport. You just show people, oh wow, like there's a game like right down the street from me. And that's the other thing. It's what happens with CHL. Every time the World Juniors come around, everybody obsesses about the World Juniors, and then you can't be bothered to go to your OHL rink. It's it's the same players, it's the same guys. It's something to do, man. So yeah, I just a little. I would love to know. I'd love to also start a sports network that does talk about these things. Yes, we'll show you your Leafs highlights too, but yeah, here's a CEBL highlight. Here's a CPL highlight. Here's a discussion on why the CPL Media Pro deal is a little off. We do what we do, Bubs. But yeah, we get a 40-minute podcast every day and 6 minutes at 6. We can only do so much. We need these networks that call themselves sports leaders to really showcase everything we have to show in this country, and that includes U Sports as well.
Well, I'm totally with you on board of it, and I always remember hearing you. I don't know, it's a couple months ago. Just in talking with in the newsroom, I heard you say that you're going back to your college. I think there was a game or whatever, and
Niagara College Knights.
And I was like, wow, isn't that something? Because I think one of the things I learned in watching a lot of high level American sports and even going down to watch college football games is that, wow, look at all the alumni here. And alumni supports their schools, whether it be football, basketball, men, women's, whatever. We just don't get the alumni love, I think, in this country.
And I think it goes back to youth sports does take some responsibility here. They should take some responsibility. They don't really build, even at the schools, they don't build it like they do. And whether it's just a football thing, it's not, because you see basketball all sold out. Like, I think it's more on the schools to get their student body engaged. Like, I've been to McMaster games, like homecoming games that aren't sold out, and you're like, it's homecoming, how can you not have that sort of pride? And I don't know if it's today's university kids or versus having that sense of pride for your alum, but yeah, I think there is some youth sports school responsibility here for building that community, building that culture, that this is a must-attend event. Oh, you can't get in, you got to watch the highlights type thing. So I think a lot of people do take youth sports for granted. I would say the majority of people in this country take youth sports for granted, but there's some responsibility to be played by youth sports for that.
Well, dude, not taking you for granted was myself here, and it was everything I thought it would be.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm really excited to have you on, and I know a lot of people have you linked up with the sports scene, and of course, I think it's so great to see you blossom and do all the things you're doing on a news side as well too. You really can't talk anything. You just proved it here as we went through a variety of topics right now. So having you here was a real treat, and again, continued success, and we'll see you on the other side.
I'll see you in the office. Yeah, I'll see you in the canteen, buddy.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Okay, folks, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we do love talking sports. And if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, want to hear from you, please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, please comment. His podcast, my podcast, we appreciate it. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.